Welcome to Leader Exchange, a monthly series where we talk about leaders in Fort Worth and all through North Texas, and what we need as we grow and develop as those leaders. To make it easy today, we brought a guest with us for our podcast, Stacy Blakeley, and I'm Kevin Smith, so we hope we earn your attention and your time over the next probably 30 minutes or so, and we appreciate you being here. Stacy Blakeley, hello.
Well, hello, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Stacy, you are the CEO of Policy Circle. What I like doing is let's get some terms out of the way so as we reference them throughout, people kind of know what we're talking about. So Policy Circle, what is that exactly?
Well, the Policy Circle is a national grassroots movement, and we inform, equip, and connect women to be more impactful citizens. So we're not a PAC, we're not a think tank. We are aggregators, curators. We gather kind of the best of information in a non-political way so that we can really create a more informed audience, so that with that information, they feel more confident and empowered to step into the public square, but to do so in a constructive way. We know there's plenty of people that like to step in and be lots of disruptors and noisy. And so for us, we really want to see more civility and more civic engagement and people that care deeply about their communities to have the tools they need to be successful.
That's a mouthful.
It is. It's a lot.
That's a lot of
There's
stuff.
the elevator pitch. There it is.
You said it a lot of times, I can tell. We're going to dig deeper into that. But policy, where did that come from? Or the Policy Circle, what was that the right name that you focus on, I guess, policy?
Well, you know, we're about to hit our 10-year anniversary, and you're a brander and a marketer. You get it. So I'm like, oh, do we change the name? Because sometimes when you use the word policy, people immediately start thinking politics. And that's really not what we're about. And when you unpack the word policy and people say, oh, I don't know anything about that. Okay, well, have you run a business? Have you put kids through school? Have you ever dealt with an HOA in your neighborhood? Policy really it's the framework, right, that we operate in our lives. And for us, we want to make sure that people really understand what are the regulations, what are the processes, who are the stakeholders and the people that make decisions that ultimately impact how you live your life, how you run your business, where you go to church, when you could go to church. We've seen those things transpire over the last couple of years. So policy for us is really about knowledge.
And I heard you say the word as well, civic. And we're going to say that a lot today. Define that for us. What is civic exactly? A couple things come to my mind, but just please define that for us.
Think about it as the public good.
Okay.
Civic life in its simplest form is loving your neighbor and caring deeply about what happens in your community and being willing to gather the skills, the knowledge, and build the relationships so that you can move the ball in constructive ways. It's really not as hefty. Or I had somebody recently, I used the word civic duty. They're like, well, I don't like duty. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry. Can we talk through that? Do we need to, unpack that with you?
Sure.
But it's kind of a dirty word these days. It's sort of like when you go to church and everybody wants to talk about grace and nobody wants to talk about sin. We have all these freedoms as citizens that we are like, oh, I have these inalienable rights. Well, you also have some duties and obligations. Otherwise, you're not going to have those rights anymore.
Absolutely. We're going to keep on that one as well. You said the word duty, but obviously engagement, I hear that quite a bit. Civic engagement, how do leaders do that? Define engagement. How do we measure that? It sounds easy. Oh, we're engaging people. Okay. How do we know if we're successful? What does that mean?
We love measuring at the Policy Circle. Okay. Maybe too much. We might be a little metric happy. But I'll tell you the thing about measuring engagement, I think there's sort of a bare minimum when it comes to civic engagement. And that is to be an informed voter, show up and vote. And then if you get called to jury duty, don't make a lame excuse. Go do your part, which we've all made a lame excuse at one point or another. That's the bare minimum. So when we talk about civic engagement, it's really stepping in to do more. It's learning more about your community. It's listening, asking questions, and then identifying areas where you can step in and where your unique skill set it can be used. And so civic engagement requires a little bit more attention and action.
All right. So we discussed policy in the Policy Circle. We talked about civic engagement. I've also heard you talk a lot about that person, that man or woman in the arena. Again, so I know that to me, that's kind of a core theme, everything we're going to talk about today, or at least it feels pretty good. Say that again, if you would, to start us off, and then we'll talk about it a little deeper later in the talk here.
What about the man or woman in the arena?
Correct.
Well, I think that we're living in times where it's easier to sit behind a screen. We see that there are some people that are very courageous with things they'll say on Twitter that they'd never say to you in person. And so what really matters is not sort of, I would say, the critic, as that famous quote says, and the critics are abundant these days. What matters is the men and women who care enough about their neighbors, their schools, their businesses. They're going to be willing to take a risk, because anytime you step up and you become more elevated, more in the public eye, there's a risk to that. But there's also a tremendous reward. And so I think what we're going to try to do today when we unpack this together as a group is identify, what is your why? Because if you don't have a unique purpose and some moral clarity around why you're going to engage, well, those arrows are going to take you out. But if you're willing to go into it with a very distinct why, and I hope it's rooted in loving your neighbor and making the community more prosperous and healthy and connected, you can survive those attacks, you could thrive and actually make some changes.
So you're leading the policy circle, and you have this commitment. Obviously, it comes out in your passion, but it didn't start just yesterday. Tell me about the childhood. Where did you grow up, and how did this, maybe some of these characteristics and foundation begin for you?
Gosh, well, I grew up in the thriving metropolis of Venus, Texas, just down the road.
Okay, how many people are in Venus?
I don't even know. I mean, it was really small when I was there. They had all the school was K through 12 in one building. But see, our ranch also crossed over into the thriving metropolis of Midlothian, the cement capital of Texas. And so I chose to go to the big school, which was actually turned into a 4A school eventually. I had a great education. And, we have manufacturing all around us, which, I might glow in the dark now, but it provided a great tax base. And so I was a debater in high school and enjoyed student government and just, really a geek early on and a proud nerd. And then I left there and was the first person in my family to go to college, which my dad was pretty convinced that was just a scam so that I could get money out of him for 4 more years. And he was probably right to a certain extent. But I had just such a love of learning from a really young age. And I always, from as long as I can remember, I loved gathering people for a common purpose. So that's kind of been a common theme for me growing up.
So you start out, you go to North Texas, that first step, if you will. You got there 4 years, and then you decided, I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. Well, tell me about that, or how did that transition all work?
Okay, so for a while in college, I thought I was going to be the next Diane Sawyer. So forgive me if I live out my broadcast dreams with you all here today. But so I switched my major to radio, TV, and film. And I had a little TV show and I had a little newspaper that I wrote for. Well, part of my beat was covering the county commissioner's court in Denton. And they had 2 county commissioners in their 20s. One was Scott Army, his dad, Dick Army. And so we were the only people under 30 at anything. And I mean, county commissioner's court is not exactly a place to hang out for fun in college. And he said, you ought to be an intern for my dad in DC. And I just had not grown up in this environment. So I was like, is that even a thing? Like, how does one do that? And so I ended up getting an internship in the summer. I guess that was before the Republicans were in leadership. And I'll never forget my small town newspaper. I mean, big story. It says Wrights, which was my maiden name. Wrights goes to Washington. Like my mother framed it. It was this big moment. And so then after college, I went back.
Very nice. So what do you call upon today from that experience? I mean, just going to DC and that wide eyes and hello, what are we doing here?
Oh, I was fresh off the farm. I thought for sure I was going to get hit by a bus. There was a lot to process in DC. And it was a time when it was riddled with crime. Remember Marion Barry was the mayor? Super special. And a time. And so, I mean, I learned a lot quickly, but working for Dick Army, and they had become leadership at that point. And so he was majority leader. And then, of course, Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House at that time. It was a very dynamic moment where you saw a level of unity that we haven't seen since. You saw this strength of purpose, getting everybody on the same page. Newt may not be everybody's favorite, but he put people in a place where they all could row in the same direction. Yeah. So I saw that early on, how effective that was. And I just enjoyed my time there immensely and made relationships that to this day I keep up with some of the folks that I worked with there. But I'll be honest, a little time in DC, I thought, this isn't for me.
Check box.
Did it.
Moving.
did it. And I had planned to go to law school
Okay.
at that point. And my dad informed me there were too many attorneys in the world. And that he
So
did
how
not.
did you convince him on that?
Well, I didn't. And
Okay.
he said, I'm not going to co-sign. I'm not getting that U-Haul because I had been accepted to University of San Diego, Kevin, and I had a place to live in La Jolla. I don't think I was very serious. I think I was just really excited about moving to California. And my dad, I really think, did me a favor because it forced me to get a job, to be responsible. And then when I did finally get to law school, gosh, I appreciated it so much more. And I also had the context of having worked for Fortune 100 companies. So when you're sitting in your business law and business torts, makes a little more sense when you're older.
Absolutely. And so you selected SMU.
I did.
Well done. What a wonderful school, and just a great connector within North Texas within that. Also gave you some governance, understanding that. So again, that structure you talk about, just that policy, that probably was cemented during that time, I assume.
Absolutely. I loved SMU. And, I had both my daughters while I was at SMU.
Okay.
So I was the girl with the backpack and the very pregnant person walking around the whole time, but they were so supportive. And I think that's really a testament to the school. I mean, I was the first person to ever have that level of poor planning, but it worked out really well. And they were so supportive of my journey as a young mom and a law school graduate. So I couldn't have been in a better place.
Did you practice a few years then? What when you finished there, what was kind of the goal, and what did you end up doing?
Straight out of the gate, I
Yep.
went to a really aggressive commercial litigation shop
Okay.
with a kind of famous litigator who wore the shiny gray suit and the slick back hair. I mean, it's like he'd been, remember that like Denny Crane or whatever, that TV show? That's who I worked for when I first came out. I also worked for some terrific, wonderful people there, and it was commercial litigation. So what was interesting though is, my dad, my grandparents, it's all construction, my whole family background. So I ended up, lo and behold, doing construction law. And so it was a nice full circle moment for me to walk downtown into a building that my dad helped build and push the button and go up to the 54th floor. So little Midlothian girl felt like she made it. But the business of law firms, after about 6 years and raising 2 small children, it's not an easy road. I love the law, but the law firm model in and of itself is quite challenging.
So after those 6 years, I think when we first met, you were back in the event business and kind of putting that on for different nonprofits, but also corporates. Obviously, that has helped you with what you're doing now, but tell us about that experience.
Well, in my 20s, when I was making money to go to law school, I landed an incredible job with a company in Dallas that was rapidly growing. It started off, they consolidated Ready Ice, then they became Sweeza, and then they became Dean Foods, massive company.
Very big.
And so I reported directly to the CEO, who was a graduate of Yale Law School, had been a Supreme Court justice clerk. And so he knew the whole time I wanted to go to law school. But in that interim, I got to work with incredible people. I also got to take groups to the masters. So I'm sorry, that was probably the best part of my job.
Game on.
It was a great thing, but we did a lot of sports marketing. And so that was just a terrific experience. But then I went to law school, and then afterwards I was like, okay, well, I want to combine that event marketing, some of the philanthropic work we did, and I'm an attorney. And people would look at me and like, well, what do we do with an event planning attorney? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure. So I started my own business, and I launched Katie Sky Group. I named it after my daughters. And it was such a terrific experience because we worked with many nonprofits just to help them up their game. And we also worked with some great corporate clients. We also got to do some pretty stellar golf events with Exxon. So those were always quite nice. But it was just for me, it was a time to learn how to build a business, build teams. And being an entrepreneur was a real risk for me because I was that attorney. Like, I liked my paycheck. I loved having an IT department. And as you know, and many of the people in Leader Exchange, just like when you're running your own shop, you wear all the hats. So it was a great preparation for what I'm doing now.
All right. So you get to this point. So why did you decide to become that person, that woman in the arena for the policy circle? How did they twist your arm, and why was it the right fit?
Let me tell you, I look back at my random career journey, right? The pivots, the potholes, the moments you thought, why do I have this job? The Lord redeemed every single experience to prepare me for where I am right now. And I had no idea, I'll be honest, when I took this job, how great it would be. And I am able to meet the most amazing humans. I get to work with and for and around people that are just, well, they make me feel like a slacker sometimes because they're just doing so many incredible things. But I knew that this was an opportunity to combine that background. And I missed being engaged in policy. And I don't really miss politics, but I missed being part of that process. So when this opportunity presented itself in the middle of COVID, which I highly recommend selling your event business during COVID, real winning strategy for me. But it was worth it. This has been the best opportunity I've ever had. And the people I meet are the fuel.
Now, Policy Circles, how many states is in? 40 something?
So we're in 48 states.
Which ones are you not? I'm curious now.
Well, I haven't made the trek to Hawaii and Alaska, and
okay.
I'm really volunteering to go launch that policy circle in Hawaii. Anybody wants to do that that's listening, just let me know.
Well, Jeff Sanders has kind of the foundation in for leader exchange there as well. So
I think we could partner. It would be great.
Perfect.
So then we have about 15,000 folks that participate in our broader network. That's going to be men and women. They attend our events, they read our briefs, and the policy circle briefs that we produce, it's really an incredible generator for us of new eyes to get engaged with the concepts and the materials that we put out into the world. So, what's been interesting for us as we've kind of gotten a little more sophisticated about unpacking who we're engaging with around the country is those fun Google Analytics, which I know you teach probably a lot about how people can navigate the ever-changing algorithms.
Yes.
But, we had about 25 million hits last year, and 40% of those were men. And of that group, we had about 30% that are 18 to 24, which I find interesting. And it may be we're putting together materials and it's a great shortcut when somebody has an assignment because all the sources are there and it's great. But these briefs are a big driver of us growing our audience. And then during COVID, we launched really robust virtual programming. So that's a nice complement to our model because there's plenty of people that don't live somewhere where there's a policy circle or their time and their schedule doesn't permit.
Right.
So they can watch us on YouTube. They can engage when it works best for them. But the silver lining for COVID is that we've grown 30-40% year over year since 2020.
It's a good number.
It's good. Works for me.
Absolutely. Well, back to your 18 to 24, I just think about that age group and teaching in college. And again, you don't know what you don't know.
No.
I mean, you think about when we got out of undergrad, we didn't know, and we still don't know. You're exposed to so much more.
Absolutely.
But how do you then cut through that noise of just, do I trust that source? Do I not? How do you coach people for that? Just saying that we're putting out these briefs, but how do we find the right information as leaders to make sure we're making choices based on the right information or trusted information?
It's a huge issue. And it's probably one of our biggest challenges, I think, as a country, that disinformation is rampant. Misinformation, disinformation, there's intentional, misleading things that are put out into the media. And there's just a lot of bad journalism. I'm sorry. I was a journalism major for a while, and there's just some really, the standards have slipped. And what I'll find is I'll go around talking to people and I'll ask people to raise their hand and say, okay, how many of you, if you really want to find out what's going on in a particular issue, how many of you consult 2 sources? Like, everybody's hands shoot up. 3 sources, still going up. 4 sources. And I'm like, wow, these are good news consumers. But most of the world is going to fly through their Daily Mail in the morning or their TikTok news feed. I've read some statistics now that 50% of young adults trust social media just as much as they do mainstream. So think about that. And a vast majority of folks that are under 18, their only news source is TikTok. And so we have to become discerning consumers of news. And I think more than ever, as an attorney, I'm always questioning sources, but we all have to develop a healthy level of cynicism, especially when you have pundits that proclaim this, right, is the only issue. This is the only way. And I quit watching, listening, or reading the pundit world. And I really now dig in and focus on highly sourced news and sources. And the policy circle is very intentional about aggregating and curating from world-class think tanks that are held to a very high standard. And then we'll go straight to the source of the data. And one of the things that I think sets us apart at the Policy Circle is we have this crazy idea that people can think for themselves. And so we want to give you the facts and let you land at your own conclusion. Fun, huh?
I like where you're going. What are the three sources? Give me 2 or 3 sources that you trust when you wake up and you do get on your phone. And again, you're not at the office yet, so you have access to everything. What are 2 or 3 news sources that you kind of go, you know what? More times than not, I'm going to trust what I'm seeing here. What's your go-to?
Okay, so of course, if I want background knowledge on an issue, I do look at our briefs because we provide a lot of historical context, which I think is important. But day to day, there is Smart Her News, HER News.
Okay.
It's run by Jenna Lee. She was a former Fox anchor who left because she felt like she wasn't able to present objective journalism. No dig on any network, but that was why she left.
Yeah.
She has created this, and it is Instagram news that is quick, it's palatable, it's balanced. We've invited Jenna to do several things for us because she just does a great job unpacking an issue with zero narrative. Super refreshing. Yeah. Jessica Yellen is another person that is on Instagram. Similar thing. Big broadcast journalist that is now independent journalism. Another thing I'd encourage folks to look at is All Sides Media. And what's interesting is they have this matrix, right? And they plot the news organizations based on, are they left? Are they center? Are they right? And so you can get one issue, right? Like, so, they tried to oust Speaker Johnson yesterday. You're going to get all kinds of different coverage. So you're going to see what the left says about it, the center says about it, and the right. And really, that's the best you're going to do in those 3. And then the last thing I would say is there's a new media, kind of a Google competitor called Free Spoke. And Free Spoke is interesting because they use a little bit of that all sides media to show you all 3. They don't track you. So that's one thing. They respect your privacy. Yep. And there's no pornography on their search engine. So it's another good source to support.
Free Spoke. Okay.
Free Spoke.
Love that.
It's good stuff.
Yes, it is.
I love.
And there is good stuff out there.
There is good stuff.
We fall in. Is it lazy? Is it whatever? What's easiest? The algorithms make it so easy for us just to click on what's in front of us.
I still read the New York Times every day. I still read the Washington Post every day. There's still excellent journalism out there, but you have to be mindful that you're dealing with human beings and you're dealing with a polarization in our culture that makes it very difficult to walk any kind of political tightrope anymore. It's just a mess.
We talked earlier, just who's reading your briefs, what's going on, men and women. This is designed, obviously, the policy circle, women primarily, which I think is pretty exciting as I look at who's graduating from college these days. 65% female. Teaching at TCU, I will teach a sports marketing class. I'll have 20 to 25 women and 5 guys.
Wow.
Sports marketing.
Love it.
But again, I do too. And it's just, they're insightful, they're engaging, they're curious. And they're leading well. They're getting out and getting great jobs. And so I got to think, at 18 to 24, how do you find the right sources and really train yourself as you begin your leadership career and moving forward? Is that impacting? How does that impact what you guys do or don't? I know you're in the right place for the right reason for that, but.
Yeah, we focus on women for a couple of pretty strategic reasons. I saw somebody put a post out the other day that said women outvote men, and they do by a wide margin. Women vote more frequently. They outlive men. Sorry, guys. It's
guilty. I got it. Feel it.
Reality.
Yes.
And that we outnumber them. But yet you still see that women still hold less than about 30% of elected roles. You see even far fewer women in those roles that have free markets and personal responsibility as one of their top guiding principles. And for us as an organization, we also have been carefully tracking the wealth transfer. So Morgan Stanley has some data that they've put out that's been widely reported on at this point, that women are going to control 2/3 of the wealth in this country by 2035. And with that wealth comes influence. And at the policy circle, we want that to be informed influence. And so there's a number of strategic reasons. And the bottom line too is we feel like we're not in the business, let's just get women for the sake of women. We want really effective, informed, capable women sitting in these seats that share our values. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, as it should be. We were straightforward in a lot of the issues that we're dealing with in our society. All right, moving forward. Those women, you talk about elected. So we're here in Fort Worth. You, me, how do we start? How do we get going? Let's say we want to be civically engaged. Give us from the low end I just want to be, know what's going on. Why are they tearing up my street? How do I figure that out? To being elected, kind of walk us through that pendulum of how we would engage civically?
Well, let me tell you, Fort Worth, y'all have got it going on. Betsy Price, Maddie Parker,
We're very fortunate.
Kay Granger. This is the land of amazing women leaders. So I have to applaud you on that. 3 women I greatly admire. But for everyone, there's plenty of folks that they don't need to run for office. There's some that we could quickly argue should not. We see them. Some of those are already there. But this is a situation where there is a spectrum of engagement. And the very first thing is, to the point you've already made, be informed, be discerning. I'd say the second thing is lower the temperature. Okay. What I mean by this is when you engage with the world, and whether it is the city is about to have some big new bond and you're not happy about it, or it could be an election cycle that's coming up, or it could even be, oh, they're changing the road in front of my house to a one-way. It's going to decimate my neighborhood. All this different thing. When you go in to approach these issues, we tell everybody, try to be more curious and less furious. It's catchy, looks good on a t-shirt, but in reality, what this means is come into this and ask questions, be willing to be wrong, and be open-minded enough to take in the information so that you can be operating from a place of knowledge and collaboration, not in outrage and I'm going to bulldoze this situation. I would say the other piece, just show up. It's vitally important. And if you don't know where to start, go to your city's website, go to a planning and zoning meeting. I know that sounds like, oh, wow, that ought to be as much fun as watching paint dry. You will be surprised what you're going to learn in a planning and zoning meeting, economic development meeting. Go to a school board meeting. Just don't stand up and yell. Just show up and be nice. And if you will show up at these meetings, what you typically realize is that you're going to learn things that you're not going to hear anywhere else. We know local media coverage, it's scarce. And a lot of these meetings, they're not even covered. And so you're going to get there and you're going to learn more things about your community. It's going to spark an idea or a question. And then as you start to show up and identify areas, what the interesting thing is you start to know who are the decision makers. You also start to become known as a thoughtful citizen who's showing up for the right reasons. And then from that, I'm sorry, people get a little taste of this. They get on a task force or a commission, or they participate in a project, and we see this thousands of times over at the policy circle. We gather what we call stories of impact. And so we tell us, as a result of the policy circle, what'd you go do? And it can range, right? You can write an op-ed to, I ran for school board. But what we see is they get a little taste of making a difference, and then they want to do more. And so as you kind of work through this spectrum, I'd say it's creating a culture for your spheres of influence so that the people around you also want to do these things, creating a company culture where you can actually discuss hot topics without anybody having a cow and, going to HR about something you said, having this culture where we can engage in robust dialogue, having a company culture where if you want to go be a poll worker, you get a paid day off. You want to go vote, you're going to get half a day paid, right? Creating this culture where people feel confident and supported to be more civically engaged. And then, of course, the last piece of it is you're going to have some courage and step into the arena, whatever that looks like. So if you want to take this all the way to the mat, Kevin, you're going to have to step in and you're going to have to take some risk. But in that's where you're going to have the biggest impact as an individual.
Okay. All right.
There it is. Got your marching orders.
Sounds easy.
It actually is.
Well, and it can be. And I think that's the way, and I like what you're doing. You're breaking this down to some easy steps, because I go, do I want to support anything in our community? Do I want to subject my family to the nonsense that we may say and hear? Mm-hmm. And it's just easy to say no. And that's why I love this, that we're breaking it down into bite-sized pieces as leaders to take it internally with our families, with our community, our neighborhood. Start there, start small.
Take your kids.
Engage
with your kids. And I'll tell you, the Policy Circle developed what we call our Civic Leadership Engagement Roadmap. CLEAR.
Okay. Start again. So
Civic Leadership Engagement Roadmap.
CLEAR. Okay. We're there.
Or CLEAR, but CLEAR. We're going to go with CLEAR. And the nice thing about CLEAR is you start off, it's 3 months, it's virtual. You have a cohort of about 35 folks, and you just go back to the basics. You learn founding principles. I mean, we have a civic literacy crisis in our country. 70% of Americans right now would fail a basic civic literacy test. I'm talking name all three branches of government
Yeah,
sort of
I'd
thing.
probably fail.
I think you're going to be okay on that.
I don't know.
But that civic literacy piece, so we boost that. We start with founding principles, help people understand sort of what's the landscape. And then they actually have assignments. So they get you have to go take a city council person for coffee. You show up at a meeting. And so when you talk about sort of those bite-sized pieces
Yes.
and that framework, for instance, I'll give you an example. Here in Texas, there's a woman that we met in Austin at one of our events, and we did a day at the Capitol to kind of demystify what it is to go to your state capitol, by the way. That is your state capitol. You should be able to go there at any time.
Thank you.
Go visit, Kevin. But out of that, she said, I think I'm gonna sign up for Clear, which she did. She owns several like beauty spas in Central Texas. And her first thought was, maybe I can get more engaged and start learning the regulatory landscape to make the life easier for my employees. Now she is testifying in front of the Texas Licensing Board and Occupations Board. She's developing an apprentice program, and she is advocating for less onerous rules while increasing training and safety. And she told us the other day, I would have never in a million years. She's like, I'm the Botox queen. Why would I think I could go to Capitol Hill? And she's gone there and has been wildly effective because she is a citizen doing the work. She's not a big donor. She's not a political person. And it's those citizen leaders that I tell you, they get the attention. And you think your city council person won't take you up on coffee? You're wrong. You think the letters and emails that you send to even your congressman, doesn't matter to them? They matter.
I love these bite-sized pieces. And something else you guys have created, which I just got a hold of, watch your focus. Again, it's a card game. It's something that can do that, with people you like and stuff like that. But some of these questions are kind of eases into that, kind of talk us through that. I saw 32 cards, 62 cards, 30 categories.
Yep.
So what are some favorite categories that are part of this? I mean, I'm just seeing environmental issues. I'm seeing education issues. Which ones kind of bubble to the top that most people like talking about if they're going to talk about stuff?
We definitely see a trend when we go around. This is a really cool kind of gamification of our model. So, typically people read a brief and then they gather in person and use a discussion guide. So it probably takes you an hour to prepare for one of those policy circle meetings. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of a fun intro to the model. And so Kathy Cranberg, fellow Texan, this is her company, Authentic Agility Games. And she created these games initially so that she could have better conversations around her kitchen table with her kids. And then now we were her test case to see if a nonprofit could sort of gamify what we do. It's really cool because this has a wide range of topics, as you said, and you can go through and pick out the topics that you care about.
Right.
Pour everybody a cup of coffee, glass of wine, and engage in a really thorough and interesting conversation. And I'll tell you, I just did one of these in Naples with the group, and we covered the mental health brief topic.
I'm looking at mental health here. Yeah.
And I mean, and the conversation went from, what are you doing for vacation, to very in-depth, a mix of personal experiences and then the changes that we wanted to see in the mental health system. So talk about a jump starting of an actual substantive conversation as opposed to chit chat.
Yep.
But the topics that really seem to be rising to the surface, not only with these games and cards, but on our brief library.
Yep.
Everyone's talking about immigration. We have a brand new brief that we have. Well, we have a brief we've completely revamped given the situation that we have. So immigration is a really good one because there's a lot of misinformation there, but there are also some things that you can do and take action on. We also have the brief on mental health is always popular. We have a brief on human trafficking, and these are issues that transcend politics, so they make for really important conversations. But then there's others in here. You want to sit around and talk about taxes? You think that's boring? Oh my gosh, the conversation gets fascinating. We have one on government regulations. We have, because, there should be some transparency and accountability in government. Call me crazy. But these topics in here, you'll see, like we have opioids, which is going to be a heavy topic. Mm-hmm. Another lighter topic, but super important, stitching the fabric of neighborhoods. What are the components that make a great neighborhood?
Right.
And so you can use these cards, cover several topics, or just pick one. And the policy circle, everything we do is geared towards action. Yep. And so you'll see on the cards and the briefs that after you read these and you have this conversation, we want you to think about, what can I do about it? What is the next step for me? I mean, I want you to be informed, have a great conversation, but it can't just stop there.
Yeah, no, I like it. So this back to the neighborhoods, the lens. What is the best feature about your neighborhood? It gets us talking in a positive way. Why it matters. How does zoning impact the vibrancy of neighborhoods? Do we even understand that? What's going on? And kind of do it that way. So I see how this can really
Yeah.
instigate some nice
And then you
conversation.
say, I can't wait to go to the planning and zoning meeting.
Ease us into that.
I just can't wait. See, that's
Ease
what's
us
going to
into
happen.
that. I can start with a nice,
You can start with a great conversation
great
and a glass of
conversation
wine.
at a table and a glass of wine with friends.
It's perfect.
Absolutely.
And this too, just to go back to that word policy,
Yeah.
people don't need to be intimidated. This is just another great way to get informed. And what I love about what I do is I meet people all over the country and I see this moment where they realize, oh, I know more than I thought I knew, and I can do far more than I thought I could do. Pretty great.
Outstanding. Stacy, thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, Leader Exchange, thank you. Stacy Blakeley, again, this is the end of our spring series, our fourth and final speaker of the series. We do it every month, and thanks for finishing it off well. We're going to come back in the fall and have a full lineup then. But again, we appreciate it. Be a leader, be in the arena, step up. To Stacy's point, it doesn't have to be difficult. It's a little scary at times, but it doesn't have to be difficult. But again, we thank you for watching us today. Have a great day.